Hey, welcome to the State of Purple and the State of Purple podcast. He's Jack Day. I'm AJ Mansour. And today, as always, we are brought to you by our friends at Soda Stick, where you can go find your Minnesota sports inspired goods, t shirts, hats, stickers, mugs, papers, posters, all sorts of Minnesota sports inspired goods. And you can get them for 15% off right now using the promo code KFAN. That's sodastick.com and the promo code KFAN. You can see at the bottom of the page here, we've got some of those Vikings themed t shirts. Jack's got the hat on right now. Anything there, sodastick.com, 15% off with the promo code KFAN. Thank you to Soda Stick. Soda Stick bouncing back, keeping us positive over the weekend. Black Friday, Cyber Monday. They've been busy. Minnesota Vikings have also been busy, Jack. They bounced back with the Turkey Day win over the New England Patriots. First off, favorite turkey dish for favorite Thanksgiving dish. I'm going to judge you on this hardcore, so you better be careful here. What's your favorite Thanksgiving dish?
That is a tough question. I've been pushing my family for the last couple of years. That still hasn't worked out, but I'm a huge mac and cheese fan. So I've been pushing to try to get that established as an actual, I don't know. I see a lot of people, a lot of other social channels posting about and saying that it is a social dish or it is a Thanksgiving dish. I don't know if that's something that you guys count on yours, but I think there's two things that if we're not counting turkey, which I don't know if I would necessarily choose turkey anyways, but I think mashed potatoes and gravy, along with whatever type of bread your family does, it's a necessity. I've always been that kid growing up in the family that's hoarding the rolls on my plate, which I've been doing it, like I said, since I was a little kid. So I think that with the mashed potatoes and gravy, but if I had to pick one, it would be mac and cheese, but that's not even something traditionally that my family makes.
So on the mac and cheese note, I would say it fits. Am I right? I mean, it doesn't feel like it's, a part of a different meal. It's not a traditional Thanksgiving Day meal piece, but it definitely would fit. Mine, I always got to go stuffing. And and I shouldn't say stuffing. I should say what dressing is dressing when you make it outside of the bird, because I like it when it's a little crispy and not as, I mean, it's still moist, but not as moist as if it were cooked inside the turkey, as stuffing is wont to do. So I'm a stuffing guy, dressing, whatever you want to call it. The sage, the Italian sausage. Oh, sorry, DH2284 doesn't like Thanksgiving. Sorry about that, DH2284, whatever your numbers are. We'll get to the Minnesota Vikings, but we're handling some business first. We're going to get to the fun of the New England Patriots game. Bounce back there. But I hope you had a good Thanksgiving, Jack. Good time with family. You watched the game with the family on Thursday night?
Yes, I did. And it was we're back to talking about the normal Vikings. I will say that after the 43 Dallas game, we're talking about I don't know if cardiac kids is even the right word to explain that game, but the one score games, which it kind of felt like it was up and down, and then they came out on top. And I think that's kind of the Vikings that we're used to seeing in 2022.
Yeah, we're used to seeing them. And the last 2 years, this has been what it's been, right? These close games, one score games. Last year, they lost all of them. This year, they're winning all of them. I mean, the two losses that they've had have been the blowout variety or the, not close variety by the time you get to the end of the game. So the wins have all been close, and it's been good. I think that that's something that this team is learning on the go and preparing themselves for in the playoffs, because playoffs football is usually close football games, whether it's because the weather, if it's an outdoor game, or the time of year, you kind of slow it down. You try and do more run and defense for those outdoor games, or if it's just good teams on good teams, good on good, and you're both scoring points, you're going to have a close matchup, one way or the other. So the fact that this team is learning how to win those games, and maybe more importantly, learning not how to give up, I think is a very important thing, to the tune of 33-26 over the New England Patriots on Thanksgiving night. Jack, what did you love about that game? Obviously, it was a quick bounce back. I think that might be the one thing that I love the most, is we were all fearing the worst. You get whooped by Dallas, and then you take the field 3-4 days later and you lose again. What happens then? Where's the momentum? Where's the fan base? But they didn't. They won that game and righted the ship. What did you love most about that game on Thursday night?
I loved a lot, and I think when I say a lot, I think that means pretty much the offensive side of the ball. So we can start there and kind of talk about the positives from that. But first and foremost, I believe Kirk Cousins only got sacked one time, and they were playing against Matthew Judon, who was leading the NFL in sacks. And they had Blake Brandel starting at left tackle, who might have just past Mike Gesicki for the worst gritty of all time, but I was enjoying it. I think the humor of it being a Vikings player instead of an opposing team made it a little bit easier to laugh and appreciate just how bad that was.
You know what's funny about that? Um, I think it was Adam Thielen. He joined Black Friday morning after the game. After we're all laughing at Blake Brandel and his terrible, if you want to call it that, gritty, and we post the video and we kind of laugh at it and have some fun with it. Thielen shared that the idea to get the whole team together to do the gritty was actually Blake Brandel's idea. So the whole planning process of getting the team after Justin scores a touchdown, I would assume it's only when Justin does, but maybe it was anybody, was actually his idea. And then he went out there and did that. And I just thought that was a funny little anecdote to add to the mix.
That does make it even better that it was his idea. But I just want to say, after kind of falling flat on their face, the way that Kevin O'Connell was able to schematically win this game with his offense was impressive to me. Like I said, Kirk Cousins, when he had pressure in his face, everyone's talking about it. I've been guilty of saying it too. Kirk Cousins has not been having, statistically speaking, his best season in Minnesota, but it's a different version of Kirk Cousins than we're used to seeing. There was a couple plays that stick in my mind where I saw one on Twitter today where he was kind of avoiding some pressure and then he found Adam Thielen for like a 15-yard gain. He's moving around a little bit more, which is something that I've always wanted to see him do. And we're seeing him, rather than take the sacks or get rid of the ball right away. Like Kirk Cousins, we know he can do that. He can get rid of the ball quickly, but he's doing things that the great quarterbacks or quote unquote great quarterbacks are doing in the NFL, where he's avoiding pressure a little bit more and he's keeping his eyes downfield. And we're not used to seeing Kirk Cousins do that. And I think that is where we're seeing him maybe throw more interceptions. It's maybe because Kirk Cousins is being more aggressive. And I think that's something that this Vikings fan base has been calling for the last 2, 3, 4 years plus. So that was fun. And the fact that it was a primetime game and Kevin O'Connell noted that in his post game speech to the team. And he said, the game started at 7:25 and went on and talked about Kirk Cousins. I thought that was cool. And it just shows that this locker room is bought into Kirk Cousins. I know Adam Thielen said something as well, or maybe it was Kirk Cousins said something about Adam Thielen where he came up before the game and just said, hey, we're all behind you. And Kirk Cousins, I'm sure you saw this after the game. He's been very hard on himself. And I feel pretty confident in saying this was a top 3 performance for Kirk Cousins in Minnesota against a very, very good defense.
Yeah, I mean, you can't look past the successes of this team. Now, there's some things we can talk about in a little bit that, they need to fix or need to figure out. But at the same time, I was really impressed with Kevin O'Connell not being, going blow to blow, let's say, with Bill Belichick, right? I mean, how easy would it be for a rookie head coach to be overwhelmed, to look across the field and see that scowl, right? The scowl across the field. I don't remember if he was wearing the cut sleeve sweatshirt or not, but you know what he brings to the table, and you know who he is, where he's been, and how he, they always talk about how he takes away what you do best. He makes you kind of play left-handed or play off-handed, whatever your left or right hand. They tried to take away Justin Jefferson. Didn't really work. I mean, Justin Jefferson still got his. So they found a way to still do that. But at the same time, they went out, they set the tone. They didn't win the toss, but they got the ball first, and they scored off the first drive. That's really important to this Minnesota Vikings football team. Then they continued the pressure. They continued the onslaught. They got special teams help with Kene Nwangwu's kick return, his 3rd of his career. That was huge, came up at a big point in the game. And then they scored the only points in the 4th quarter to put the Patriots away, and they did it with Adam Thielen. They got TJ Hawkinson in the mix early in the game. They did a lot of things right to kind of prove that, this New England Patriots team is not, I wouldn't call them a great team, but they're still the Patriots. It's still Bill Belichick, and they didn't go out there intimidated. They went out there like they belonged. They fought from behind. They found a way to get the victory, and at the end of the day, they move on to 9-2 and put themselves in a really good position for the playoff picture. But again, I think this is a boost of confidence for a win over a big head coach, a big team that has a good defense, right? You stopped their defense from really dominating the way that they had in the past. And I think that you can take a lot of things from this game, Jack, and build on them. Now with a 10-day rest 10 day rest, whatever it is, from Thursday to Sunday, get healthy, maybe get Dalvin Tomlinson back in there, get some guys back in there, get some depth going, and then come back to the field against what might be a more interesting New York Jets team. We'll talk about that later this week, but I think that they can build off of this game, and it came at the right time of year for them.
Yeah, I agree completely. And if you want to start talking about some of the concerns as well from this game, I think it's pretty clear night and day, offense, defense. You can throw some special teams concerns. What would a State of Purple podcast be without me talking about a missed Greg Joseph extra point? But defensively, I was talking to some buddies about this, and the thing that bothered me the most about this game, I made a joke, and I went back and I made a joke on last week's show about this, and I went back and looked it up. And the Vikings had actually beaten the Patriots twice in my lifetime, in 97 and 2000. So I would have been somewhere between the ages of 2 and 5 when those games took place. So they hadn't won.
Denny Green was the coach.
So they hadn't won a game since, again, before my sports memory. But the reason for that was Tom Brady and Bill Belichick. And this Vikings defense did everything that they could to make Mac Jones look like he was prime Tom Brady. And that was the biggest concern for me because, yes, the Vikings secondary was depleted. Yes, there's no Dalvin Tomlinson, but it didn't even necessarily feel like we were getting beaten where our corners were just getting shredded. There was a couple plays where Harrison Smith was running backwards. I know Patrick Peterson had that tackle at the end of the game that was really nice, but the thing that bothered me the most about that performance was that. And then what I was talking about with my buddies was, can you tell me if there is a receiver on that roster that you would put in the top, I think originally I was talking about top 40, but we can even say top 30, top 40 for the sake of this exercise. Is there a receiver on that roster that you feel comfortable as a top 30 wide receiver in the NFL?
So state that again. So is there a defensive back?
No, not for for the Patriots. I don't think they don't have a receiver in that room that
Devontae Parker, Jacoby Myers. I mean, but
no one that you would really be scared of. So that's what I was like, yes, our secondary is depleted a little bit, but it still doesn't feel a lot of it. Yes, to be fair, but it's still it didn't feel right to me that it was Jacoby Myers and Devontae Parker and guys that, again, don't necessarily scare me as an opposing follower of another team, but I just wanted to get your thoughts on that because I was thinking about that. I was like, we just made Mac Jones. What did Mac Jones finish with? I have the box score up somewhere here, but I think it was
he finished with
382 yards and 2 touchdowns. That is probably the best start of Mac Jones's young career, and it happened against this bend but don't break Vikings defense.
Yeah, and a part of the where my concern might lie is even more so in how they extended some of those drives. Devontae Parker, Nelson Aguilar, Hunter Henry got the touchdowns. Those guys weren't the ones that necessarily extended the drives. It was more so Ramondre Stevenson, from out of the backfield, right? And that concerns me because a lot of teams can do that, right? A lot of teams have a pass catching back, and the good teams that you're going to see down the stretch into the playoffs. And if you can't get off the field, right? We talk about the struggle that they have getting off the field against mobile quarterbacks that can run and scramble for a first down on third down, sometimes a touchdown. For teams that don't have that, if they do have a running back that is your release valve, and you don't have a spy on that player, it does put you in a position where Ramondre Stevenson can get a first down and extend a drive that otherwise should have been thwarted and force them into a punt, but they extend that drive and continue that, get closer to the end zone, and then Hunter Henry becomes a problem. Hunter Henry wasn't a great problem. I think he had one long catch, he had a long catch of 37 yards. Outside of that, his only other 2 catches were those touchdowns. I mean, it wasn't, he had that scenario where he's not a gigantic threat up and down between the 20s, but when you get him in the end zone, you got a big body guy who has an opportunity to score a point. So that extension of drives worries me. You mentioned earlier the special teams. Largely, I think there was a long kick return, maybe a punt return that was, mildly concerning, but the big concern continues for this team to be surrounding Greg Joseph. Again, I'm going to pull up his season stats to see exactly what it was, but he's missed something like 6 or 7 extra points on the season. And
this is something that you've brought up in the past. I think this as well. Did it hit the upright? Did it, Or am
It
I?
did.
Did it did? Does it feel like all of them? Like, is he aiming for the uprights and just
I
that
don't know what it
accurate?
is, right? I mean, because if I'm not mistaken, from field goals at that range, he's 100%. But for whatever reason, when it's an extra point, and it matters less. I don't know what's going on, but he'll and it's not even like, because you're so close, it's not like it just goes and then fades and then hits the post or goes wide. It's like diagonal, like right
Yeah.
off into the distance, and it hits the post or it goes wide, whatever it is. It's a terrible kick, right? It's not even barely missing when you're from far away coming up short. That's understandable, right? Those his record from 50 and beyond, I'll give him grace on that. But these extra points for multiple times, 3 or 4 times now, that extra point alone, not the missed field goals, the extra point alone has mattered in the outcome of the game. Now, we talked about this with the Bills game. The Vikings wouldn't have had a chance to win that game had he hit an extra point, and they would have been up because the Bills would have kicked the field goal rather than go for it on fourth down, and that changed the butterfly effect down the rest of the game and gave them an opportunity to win. Not my preferred method of victory, right? I mean, I wouldn't prefer him to do that and say it worked out one time, let's do it again. But this time again, it could have been a different scenario had he made the extra point. It wouldn't have been tied as often as it was, and we would have had an opportunity to open this thing up down the stretch. So, Jack, I don't know. I mean, I'm looking real quick. I see some old Browns kickers, Chase McLaughlin. Like, I don't know who is out there as an option, but this can't continue because it will ultimately cost them a game. It's cost them scenarios, but it's going to cost them a game if he continues to miss these extra points.
Yeah, and I think to take that one step further with the frustration from this fan base is you can turn your TV on any Saturday afternoon and you can find any college football program that you want to watch, and their kickers are making those field goals from that distance. There are field goal kickers in college right now that are easily hitting from 60 yards. One, we can't say that about Greg Joseph, and we can't say that he's going to be even a sure thing for an extra point. So I think that's where the frustration comes from. I know Vikings fans have it burned in their memory that drafting a kicker, it doesn't end well. Sometimes it can end well, and if you don't cut your kickers, you can have a guy named Daniel Carlson who has been pretty reliable for his team. But yeah, I don't know. I've tweeted about it a couple times. Normally, I'm not one to get on Twitter and talk about the bad per se, but it's been frustrating watching Greg Joseph, and I don't know how much longer of a leash he's gonna have. I like I said, you don't want to do what the Vikings did to Daniel Carlson, where you just kind of shoo him out the building because he had a couple bad games. But he's proving that this is a legitimate issue that has happened in the last 2 years. I mean, last year wasn't. I don't remember off the top of my head what the numbers were for extra points from 2021, but there were field goals, timely field goals that he missed last year early in the season that could have changed the outcome, at least potentially putting the Vikings into the playoffs a year ago. So it hasn't happened yet because, like you said, they were extra points and they haven't necessarily been a huge impact on the game. But one of these games, that's not going to be the case. And I think every Vikings fan in the world has a thought inside their brain that, yeah, they're going to get through the regular season and it's going to be fine. And then there's going to be a huge kick in the playoffs that's going to come down to it's going to matter very, very much at that point, obviously. And that's where the fear comes from. So, like I said, I don't know if I'm the GM and I'm the front office in that building. I don't know if I'm comfortable not at least having some sort of competition for that kicking position, but I wanted to get your thoughts on that. Do you think if we see a couple more missed extra points that we could see the end of Greg Joseph in Minnesota in the near future?
I think I don't need any more. I think I need to have some sort of competition, some sort of fire lit under his butt. What, last couple weeks ago they brought in a left-footed punter, and we thought, hey, is this competition? Is there no? But to bring somebody in to challenge somebody, I think is necessary, and I don't need to see any more because you extrapolated this situation out and said, hey, when the playoffs come and we're all sitting on the edge of our seats, if that's what we're feeling like at home, right? We're jaded. We have this history with this team and missed field goals and all that. But if that's what we're feeling, that the players are feeling it. That the coaching staff is feeling it. And how is that supposed to give him confidence as well? So it's this cyclical thing that you miss enough, you're going to get doubt from your players, doubt from your coaches, and that affects the kicker's confidence even more until you can dig yourself out of that hole. So I'm ready to at least explore the opportunities. Like I mentioned, I don't think there's anybody that's going to wow us. There's no, what was the guy, Dan Bailey? There's no Dan Bailey who's like all time, accurate kicker sitting in the wings, just waiting to be paid enough money to come in. That situation doesn't have the possibility this year. But at the same time, I pulled up the numbers here, Jack. You mentioned last year you didn't remember what his situation was like. He missed 4 extra points last year, struggled more so from the field goal range. But this year he's already missed 5, 24 for 29 on extra points. And he's 8, 13, 15. But he's 15 for 15 on field goals from inside 50 yards. Okay, so any field goal inside 50 yards, whether it's extra point length, closer, further, whatever, he's 15 for 15, and then you're going to be beyond 50 yards, and he's 1 for 6. But we won't talk about that right now. It's the extra points that are the problem. The extra point that should be a gimme. I think we might actually, Jack, be getting to a point where we, rather than, because our hands are tied and there are no free agent kickers to bring in, Kevin O'Connell might have to start making the decision to go for 2 points rather than kicking the extra point. If that, odds are that might be better. I don't know what their red zone efficiency is or their goal line efficiency. I haven't jumped into it enough there, but at some point, if you can't trust your kicker to get you the 1 point that you need, you got to try for it to get 2, right? And in theory, you have 2 attempts to convert 1 2-point conversion to get yourself even with what an extra point would be. And you can't trust the extra points right now. So maybe it's a better option to get your big boys out there. TJ Hawkinson's in the mix now. Justin Jefferson's a beast. CJ Ham, Dalvin Cook, whoever you need, get them out there. And maybe you got to go for 2. Maybe that's the solution.
Yeah, I brought that up watching the game too. And I wasn't sure if it was the too many glasses of box wine talking or if I was actually in the right there. So I'm glad we thought the same about that. But we can probably talk a little bit. We can end the show on some positives probably because I had a couple things that I wanted to ask you. I was watching, as I'm sure most of Minnesota was watching, the post-game NBC interview with Justin Jefferson, Adam Thielen, and Kirk Cousins. And it was hilarious to me. I think we're starting to see more from this team, like off the football field, that I've personally wanted to see. Just like that, you're seeing the characters come out from all of these individuals, and that's a lot of fun for me. And I wanted to ask you, and I don't want people to take this the wrong way because I'm in no way trying to say that this is the most talented football team the Vikings have ever had, but is this the most entertaining football team that you have ever been around? It feels different, and being in the stadium and kind of seeing some of these press conferences and being there live in the moment, wanted to get your thoughts on that because like I said, Justin Jefferson, Adam Thielen, and Kirk Cousins, all 3 of them did something that made me laugh, with whether that was Thielen spitting the turkey out, Kirk Cousins mentioning the grills, or just Justin Jefferson holding his turkey leg, smiling like this because he couldn't eat it with the grills already in. But I enjoyed it, and I just kind of wanted to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, when you can even add Patrick Peterson stealing one of the drumsticks.
True, I forgot that too.
Well, what I will say, because I can't, fully give it the best thought of if this is the most entertaining team, right? There's been entertaining players from Randy Moss to just the loudmouth guys that have kind of kept you entertaining. But what I will say is it might be the most entertaining drama-free team, right? Because you have the guys who are going to be loud. They're going to have fun, but I'm trying to think. There's nobody that's going to stir the pot right now in a negative way. Complain about playing time. Who was it last year? Was it Cam Dantzler who got a little upset that somebody else got some playing time? I mean, obviously he's moved past that. He's been injured for a while now, but he's also earned that role and he's stepped up as a player. So the drama there, but there's really nobody that's going to stir the pot in a negative way behind the scenes, cause a fuss in the locker room. That part of it you do feel. And Kirk Cousins was on with PA today talking about this locker room and how close they are and how it is. It's kind of been hardened through through struggles, right? It's been, the last couple of years when they haven't had the success, they've had the leaders that can step up. They've put in the time to grow together as a group to the point now where when you have the success, maybe you're not blown away by the limelight. Maybe you're prepared for it. You're more mature. You're locked in together, bonding behind the scenes, and you can have that fun in those moments to have fun, right? You can work and be focused when you're on the field and when you need to be, but at the end of the day, when you're off the field, the game is won. You're brothers and you're having fun and you're enjoying each other's company. That clearly shows, and I think it comes from the coach too. I mean, honestly, I think Kevin O'Connell, the new mentality that he's brought, especially compared to Zimmer. We love Zimmer, but he did not have that bone in his body to be one of the guys to lift them up. It was more about, I'm going to yell at you until you fix it. I'm going to come down on you until you're ready to take steps forward. So from that aspect, I can totally see it. I mean, you now have a point where we're 11 games into the season, Jack, 12 weeks into the season, and the thing that we're talking about is playoff scenarios, right? We're talking about extrapolating out and seeing, hey, okay, if the season ended today, we would face the Washington Commanders. We'd be the number 2 seed. They're the number 7. We'd face a team that we're pretty familiar with. They gave us some fits, but I think we can probably got their number and have the ability to take care of them. A lot can change between now and then. But you're also talking about clinching a playoff berth. Next week, a Vikings win and a Lions loss clinches that playoff berth. The magic number is 2. This is early in the season to be discussing this sort of thing, but it's the reality of where we are.
Yeah, I had some high hopes for this team going into the season, but I didn't have high enough hopes where I was thinking this team was potentially going to have the NFC North locked up by week 12 or week 13. That's crazy to me. I don't know, sitting here like as a follower of this football team, I don't know if I have an answer for who I would prefer to play. Who is even in that conversation? Would it be Washington? Probably like Seattle's got to be right behind Washington then, because I'm assuming Washington jumped them, and then.
Well, no, right now it's all the NFC East, right?
True.
So those playoff picture. Let's see this right here. Let's see how updated this is. Okay. So right now it's Eagles at 1, Vikings 2, 49ers 3, Tampa Bay 4. Those are your division leaders. Then it's the Cowboys at 5, Giants at 6, Washington at 7. So the last 3 are all NFC. Right now the entire NFC East is in the playoffs if the season ended now. Not going to do that. They're going to play a lot of interdivisional games or in-division games there, and that's going to shake that up quite a bit, to be completely honest. So I don't think this dream of the NFC East completely making it is going to be possible, just because there's back-end loaded, divisional games for all these teams. But you're a win away from a bye potentially. You're a loss away from facing, the New York Giants, which I'm not scared of right there, right? I mean, you have a scenario here where it might be tough to kind of get the Cowboys, right? It's going to be a tough get to even lock up with them, and that's the only team in that mix right there. But then you have the bubble, the Seahawks. Not scared of them, really. Falcons, not scared of them. Lions, no. Packers, no. Panthers, no. Cardinals. I mean, outside of the teams that are in the playoffs, nobody scares me.
Yeah, and I will say this. I think the best thing that has happened from a perspective of outside of the Vikings locker room for them is the fact that the Niners are starting to win and not hang around that wild card section, right? Because I think we're starting to see the 49ers build momentum, and with that McCaffrey trade, I think they're a different football team. And I think that there's a lot of people around the league that are starting to slide them into the conversation as favorites for the NFC, which again, there's a lot of football left to be played. And I think that the NFC is kind of getting a bad rep, but there's some good football teams in the NFC. Say what you want about the strength of schedule with the Vikings and the Eagles, but I think they're both at the very least legitimate playoff teams. And you get past that and you talk about the 49ers, a Tom Brady-led team that is below 500 now, I believe, by a game, but still it's Tom Brady in the playoffs. You don't bet against Tom Brady in the playoffs. Right. And the wild card teams, like you said, all NFC East teams. I think Washington can give the Vikings some fits. We saw that with how good the pressure that they can get to opposing teams' quarterbacks. Again, not scared of Washington. I think that's a home game for the Vikings there. I think that would be.
I think that makes a big difference too, right? You're indoors. You can do a little more high flying, and I mean, Chase Young will be back in theory, but you know what you got a little bit there. And here's the deal, Jack. I mean, the reality. I mentioned that the NFC East is going to play each other a handful of times as we go down the stretch here. The reality is that that seventh seed will likely come from a different division. That's not a guarantee, but because they play so many in-division games down the stretch, one of those teams will probably fall off the end. And then you get the team that the Vikings will get will be a Seattle Seahawks, Atlanta Falcons, Detroit Lions, a team that maybe sneaks into it. You mentioned the 49ers. They're 3 games up in their division, so it's not going to be them. You're not going to have Arizona put on a hot streak. They've shown zero signs of that to take the division, and then the 49ers become that wild card team. I think that, like you mentioned, Washington, the Cowboys are scary, but that Washington team, in reality, you're looking at the Giants, the Commanders, Seahawks or Falcons. Washington scares me the most out of those ones, and we've already seen them.
I agree, and I think the Taylor Heineke,
I'm done with him. I mean, I like his grit, but he doesn't scare me.
No, he doesn't scare me, but that's a good way to put it. His grit coming in here. We saw him compete with, I think that was the year that the Bucs won the Super Bowl, but they had Tom Brady on the ropes for a little while in that game, and they made it a competitive game. But I'm right there with you. I don't think there's any matchup as we sit right now. If we were to go in the playoffs, there's no matchups that really scare me as a Vikings fan. When you go and you get into the divisional and then you get into the NFC, what would be the NFC championship game, then there's going to be some really good football teams that we're talking about.
Right.
But I think the Vikings are putting themselves in a good position to have at least one, probably two, and crazier things have happened than all three of their playoff games being home games. But they're putting themselves in a position to find success, at least in the playoffs, where it's at US Bank Stadium. That hasn't been the case for quite some time. I know 2017 they had the one home playoff game, but I think the Vikings are in a really good place, and I think the entire state of Minnesota should be really, really excited about the future of this football team.
And it doesn't feel the same as it has in the past either. I don't feel like this is foolish Vikings fans getting excited with a little taste of success. Because this team is tried and true. This team is battle tested so far. They fought from behind. Their defense has stepped up in big. Their offense has stepped up big. The special teams has stepped up at big times. There's opportunities for this team to get better, but at the same time, they've proven that they have what it takes to win. They have the it factor, if you will, to overcome some of those discrepancies and the deficiencies that they have along the way. And it just feels different. I'm ready to be disappointed and have my heart broken just like everybody else, but at the same time, like it just feels different than it has in the past. So that makes it fun. It makes it enjoyable to kind of go into each game feeling like, hey, we could win this. This is not out of hand. This is not above us. This is an opportunity to get another W and keep trudging forward towards the playoffs and get as many home games as you can. So it's exciting stuff, Jack. We will preview that New York Jets game, which is different than it looked just 4 days ago. We'll preview that thing later this week as we get a little more clearer picture of what this will look like, who might be coming back for the Vikings, who might be shaking things up. I would assume Mike White, if he hasn't been named the starter for next week, is going to be the starter for next week. Zach Wilson might be looking for a new job elsewhere, in or out of the NFL. I don't know. But it'll be Mike White and the New York Jets. It'll be in Minnesota. That's a good thing. It'll be a noon game. That's also a good thing we've learned. But we'll preview that thing later this week, Jack. Any final thoughts before we say peace out?
I don't think so. I think one thing looking forward, and we'll talk about this obviously later in the week as well, that 10-game Thanksgiving Thursday night mini bye, not 10-day, excuse me. Yeah. That could come up huge for this team. And I think the entire storyline after the Dallas game was, hey, playing in 4 days is the best possible thing that could happen to us. Again, we kind of talked about that in last week's episode. So if you want to hear our thoughts on if that was hearsay or not, go check that out. But I think this week saying that it's actually a huge blessing that this team gets some extra time because Delvin Tomlinson was practicing. I think we're going to see a Caleb Evans. I don't know what the period of time looks like for Cameron Dantzler, but I would imagine he should be getting some practice time, getting off that IR in the near future. Again, that's a complete guess, but I'll say I wanted to finish with something and then I'll let you wrap things up. But I wanted to sneak this in here and kind of get your thoughts before we sneak out. I think Justin Jefferson is kind of slowly, I tweeted this after the game, and I don't know if slowly is even the right word, but Justin Jefferson's name belongs in the MVP conversation. I firmly believe that. And it's not just stats. Everyone talks about how well quarterbacks are the most valuable, and I agree with that. But Justin Jefferson, he's putting up the stats, but the timeliness in some of the catches that he's not only catching, but pulling away from defenders and going up and attacking the ball at the highest point. It's a different version of Justin Jefferson than we're used to seeing. And I think Vikings fans should be absolutely ecstatic that they have. I'm going to go on record and say this now, because I don't think it's outlandish to say anymore. Vikings fans should be absolutely ecstatic that they have the best wide receiver in all of the National Football League.
Hard to argue. I think that he's doing everything that he can. He might just need some of the other guys to have a bad game. The Tua Tagovailoa, Patrick Mahomes, just to have a bad game based on the weight of the position to even the playing field a little bit. But he definitely deserves in the conversation. So cannot argue with you there, Jack. We'll sign off there. If you want to follow the State of Purple podcast, make sure you seek us out wherever you find your favorite podcasts, iHeartRadio, iTunes, or wherever you get podcasts. We are there. Subscribe, follow, whatever that looks like for you on that platform, and we'll send a new episode straight to your inbox and get you going each and every time that we have something. So do that there. You'll get the alert and we'll get going. But for now, Jack will be back later this week to preview the New York Jets and the Minnesota Vikings. And then, it'll be a fun weekend. So this is the State of Purple podcast saying peace out.